could run through the fire, I could conquer the night. If I can make it, if I try to draw the red light. I could run through the fire, I could conquer the night. If I can make it, if I try to draw the red
Should you buy the original 5K Retina iMac from 2014, 5 years later in 2019? Well, let's discuss. But first, I'm Scott with Techno Eclipse. If you want to help keep this channel sponsorship free, do check out the Patreon link down below. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Those will all be linked down below. The original 5K iMac was released back in 2014 when 4K wasn't even a popular thing at the time. I remember when they first released the 5K iMac, I was like, wow, that's really, really cool. But I didn't know too much about computers back then. I didn't really care that much, but I thought to myself, like, wow, that's a lot. Like, that's a lot of pixels. And then I just sort of moved on. Now, 5 years later, I got my hands on one of those lovely beasts, and I have some thoughts about it. So 5K is still way above the standard 4K. It is still nowhere near the standard. It was never built to be a normal person's machine, yet it was always sort of portrayed as a normal person's machine. I guess what I'm saying is 5K is unnecessary for pretty much everybody that doesn't do like video work, photography, maybe lines of code they have to deal with that, or people in like the printing industry. I believe someone commented that on one of my videos one time. It's not really meant for people that are just sitting around printing off the occasional like flyer for their newspaper, or just sitting around and occasionally watching Netflix on it and occasionally watching some YouTube. It was never built for people like that, yet it sort of was. It was always priced at around $1,800 for the base model 5K iMac, and it was always a solid-ish machine. Although 5 years later, I have some complaints about this original 5K iMac. The biggest complaint that everybody knows about, and if you don't know about it, I'm still going to repeat it, so then you'll know about it, is going to be the mobile-based graphics card inside of the 5K iMac. A 5K screen is a lot of pixels to push. It's way more than a 4K screen, and like 6 or 7 or 8 times as many pixels as a 1080p screen. To push that many pixels requires a pretty beefy graphics card, and the mobile M290X or M295X, or even the M390 or M395X that came in the next revision in 2015, were never really strong enough to push those pixels when doing graphics intensive work, which kind of stinks because a lot of people using these machines are going to be photo editors that want to be able to zoom in really close on a photo and be able to see with high detail what that photo looks like. So that was always a really big letdown with these machines, and it's still a problem plaguing them in 2019. The reason I stopped using this machine was because of that exact reason. I was editing a thumbnail for one of my videos. A lot of the times the thumbnails are taken in 1080p. They're just screenshots of a video that I took. That's literally it. It's super undemanding footage, or the occasional photo that I'll take from my GH5, which is like a 4 to 5K image in a 3:4 aspect ratio. So not the most demanding, the 1080p, but the picture is a little bit more demanding. But from the 1080p footage screenshot, it was literally struggling with that. This is like a 3 megabyte file. The screen would lag like crazy when I was zooming in with the trackpad and just trying to see how I wanted everything to look, and it would like glitch out and lag. I thought it originally was just a program. So I saved, shut it down, reopened it, and wouldn't you know it, it was still doing the exact same thing. So I figured I'll restart the computer, restarted the computer, turned it back on, and I realized at that moment that it wasn't Adobe's fault for the first time ever. It was Apple's fault in putting a display on a machine that couldn't pump out the necessary power to support that display. The graphics cards inside of these machines are lousy. Even by 2014 standards, they were much more powerful NVIDIA-based graphics cards, but we all know Apple and NVIDIA and how they hate each other so much. But to be able to push that 5K display was just not possible, and it's still not really possible. And that's going to really be the story of this whole computer, is all of the sacrifices Apple made in order to get a few things right. To get that smaller form factor, they had to use mobile graphics cards. They had to use SODIMM RAM, which isn't a big deal, but they still had to use it. They had to use a very wimpy CPU slash GPU cooler because the actual size of the machine is so small, because everything inside of it generates heat, whether it's the power supply, CPU, GPU, or even the actual display itself. All of that generates heat. And in order to be able to power that, you need to have a very powerful cooling system, which Apple doesn't. There's literally only one spot where there are cutouts in this closed design. There's just a few grills at the bottom of the display where the air gets sucked in and then sucked out. It's a really beautiful design, don't get me wrong. However, it just doesn't hold up in 2019, and I'll show you why. Alright, so you can see here, this is my setup. This is the iMac that is currently for sale. If you live in the Ohio area, hit me up on that. But basically, this is the setup that I've been using, minus the iMac. And I want to show you why this iMac is just such a bad buy in 2019. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of benefits of it. The screen is nice. If you're just doing the basics and something that's not super intensive, like 1080p video editing, or basic photo editing, or just basic tasks in general, you just want a big display with a super crisp display, this is a great fit for you. If you're someone that's a little bit older like my parents, no offense, a display like this might actually benefit you quite a lot. If you're reading an article, if you're reading something on the internet, this will certainly be really nice. But for people that are trying to get their best bang for the buck, this just isn't it. For example, if you see up there, there is a 2014 i7 MacBook Pro 15-inch, no dedicated graphics card, but if you see to the left of it, there is a dedicated GPU stuck inside of an eGPU, which is currently pumping out to this display. Now, this whole setup here cost me roughly $1,000 after picking these pieces and parts up over time. MacBook Pro 600, eGPU 150, the GPU inside of that another 150, and then this display I was able to pick up for like $100, and everything else would be used in the iMac: mouse, trackpad, and keyboard. Now all of these things are about $200 more than this iMac. But when you look at what you're getting, you get a more powerful CPU, a more powerful graphics card, not as good of a display, but still a very good display, and the ability to upgrade. If at any point in the future I wanted to get the 6-core 2018 iMac, maybe 2 years down the line, I could plug that into this eGPU setup, use Time Machine, back it up, and have a more powerful MacBook Pro, more powerful processor, more storage, etc., etc. And it's an upgradable setup by Apple standards, upgradable. And we're back. So what am I saying? Am I saying nobody should ever buy this computer ever because of the bad graphics card and a little bit outdated thermals? No, it's a fine computer for the people that I have listed off. People that are doing very basic type of work, maybe 1080p video editing, or just getting into photography. But do keep in mind that this graphics card and this CPU are going to hold you back. Now, it is an upgradable machine. However, it's not really upgradable. The only way you can upgrade it is by taking off that display, which is like taking off a $500 Band-Aid, and then if it were to hit the floor, you're screwed, and Apple's not going to help you put that Band-Aid back on. Apple is not going to help you put that display back on. You void your warranty, and you sort of risk your life. There's an open power supply, and theoretically, you could die. Obviously, I've mentioned that before because I don't want people to try this and not know the risk. Is having a computer that's like slightly more powerful than what you had before worth the risk of death? You decide. Personally, I would never upgrade one of these things. That's just not what I'm into. I like living. So what should people do that want a budget machine from Apple that's like under $1,000? Well, if it were my decision for you to make, I would say go with a Mac Mini, purchase the display, get the i5 version, 8GB of RAM, 256GB of storage. You can find those used now for a little bit cheaper, under $1,000. Get that Mac Mini, buy a display, get the keyboard, mouse, etc., whatever you need. you can get the rest of that stuff for a couple $100 and you'll be at about $1,000. Now you don't have that dedicated graphics card, which for somebody who's going to be doing intensive video or intensive photo work, you probably will notice, although it's going to be a very similar experience compared to this iMac behind me. So what I would suggest doing is just saving up for a month or so after you purchase that computer and then buying an eGPU. I've heard some people that watch these videos and they've had some trouble with their eGPU with their Mac Mini, so do keep that in mind, although I'm running an eGPU with my MacBook Pro right now and it's not even supported and I haven't really had any troubles with it. So it could be something that Apple's fixed in some of their most recent updates, but do keep that in mind. It's a tough situation you're in as somebody who wants a Mac computer under like $1,000, under $800, under $700, and I really understand that, which is why I'm trying to help you by making this video. Do keep in mind that there are 2014 and 2013 MacBook Pros that should be much cheaper, maybe like $800, and you get a dedicated graphics card, a less intensive screen, so a less demanding screen, which means that the graphics card inside of those will be able to handle it and should be able to handle your photo editing and video editing needs, especially if you're using Final Cut Pro, because it is very, very well optimized. But do keep in mind that those are getting to be older machines, and there are always negatives with older machines. So at the end of the day, I wouldn't buy one of these. I wouldn't suggest anybody buys one of these. Just don't do it. It's not really worth it. You'll be fine with a 1080p screen or 1440p screen. You don't need 5K. It's just not something that is a necessity, especially in 2019. Maybe in 2035, when 5K is the standard, you could get a 5K screen and be like, Scott, it's a standard now, but I doubt that'll ever happen. So thank you for watching the video. I'm Scott with Techno Eclipse. If you liked the video, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks again for watching. Peace out.